Alright, I've chosen to do my IOP on the hero journeys of Beowulf and Odysseus, comparing them by marketing to you guys their respective abilities. We're going to pretend they've somehow been resurrected, and that you guys are going to kind of pick one to defend yourselves or defend your people. You're kind of each representing, you know, you're each like a warlord who needs some mercenary to do battle for you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass out to each one of you this like dollar bill, and then I'm going to have at the end each one of you write down either Odysseus or Beowulf who you would pick, and see which one who we decide is kind of the better hero, or at least who you would want fighting your battles. Alright, so each one of you needs one.
Tim Tebow.
I'm afraid Tim Tebow does not have an epic poem written about him. So. Until then, you will.
No, I got two.
Or do you not have does have one?
Yeah, he has two. Currently count twice.
This?
I'm twice as important as everyone else.
Oh, it's not a no dollar. I'm sorry. Thank you.
The physical form of the opponent has on the whole.
Alright, so with that, I'm going to begin by selling to you mercenaries worldwide. The first choice in warfare since 700 BC. What can Blue do for you? If you need help to defeat a nearby city-state out of pure greed, or you need to defeat that annoying Cyclops on the next island over, let us do it for you. And you see an asterisk. Our associates may get lost. So, why are we qualified? Because of this guy. Luckily we have this epic poem. It's called The Odyssey. This guy from accounting with way too much time on his hands, Homer, wrote it. It turns out it became one of the foundational epics of Greece. Who'd have thunk? I still think he's kind of weird. So I'm going to tempt you to choose Odysseus using 3 techniques. Ethos, by establishing credibility and character for my main man. Pathos, by making him more approachable emotionally. And finally, Logos, to make the choice of Odysseus seem logical. With this first section, I will review the great achievements of Odysseus, attempting to use ethos to convince you of his credibility and character. So, the beginning of his great achievements. This doesn't actually occur in the Odyssey, it's kind of referenced to. But he has a major role in the Trojan War, in which the Achaeans, the Greeks, are fighting the Trojans across the Aegean. And there's so many, and there's so many stories from this that it has its own book, which is as important as this. Not quite, because this is the foundational epic. But also written by that weird guy from accounting, called the Iliad. This is it begins his motif of cunning over strength. For example, I'm sure you guys all know about that Trojan horse thing. Well, he's the guy who came up with that idea. He, before this, he even snuck into the city dressed up as a beggar to kind of scout out how they were going to go about attacking the city. Time and again, he uses cunning to kind of, compensate for, he might not have been the strongest guy, yeah, he's pretty impressive, but strength doesn't always win. So he uses his mind to win battles. We hear this in, we hear how respected he was and how much valor and courage in general were respected in this culture when we hear Telemachus say, "I should not have sorrowed so over his dying if he had gone down among his companions in the land of the Trojans, or in the arms of his friends, after he had wound up the fighting. So all the Achaeans would have heaped a grave mound over him, and he would have won great fame for himself and his son hereafter. But now ingloriously the storm winds have caught and carried him, out of sight, out of knowledge." We see that this kind of sets the foundation of what the Odyssey becomes, which is this 10-year journey back from the Trojan War, and that's what Telemachus is talking about here. He's saying, why couldn't he have just died a hero's death? Why couldn't he have died after using all of this great cunning? Why couldn't that have been the end of him? Because that was so respected in this culture of theirs. But it turns out that he is fated, as the Greeks believe, to go through this 10-year odyssey, which this 10-year journey that bears his name. And so if you're looking for a speedy resolution to your issues in your respective homelands, this may not be the guy. We respect arms and valor above all things, and for this reason, if it is fated to happen, it will be done. The great tactician, as his epithets would have him known, will get the job done, but in his time, or in the God's time. So the second of his great achievements that I'm going to highlight to prove to you why he'd be a good guy for whatever wars you're experiencing is the Cyclops. He, on his way home, he's with all his guys on a boat, right? And so they want to go to an island to kind of rest up, to eat, to do all those things you can't do in the middle of the ocean on a boat. And they happen to choose an island that is inhabited by several Cyclops, specifically one that ends up trapping them in his cave and eating them one by one. Not the most pleasant vacation on a tropical island, I would say. But, Cyclops in the end, it says in the book, Cyclops in the end, it was no weak man's companions you were to eat by violence and force in your hollow cave, and your evil deeds were to catch up with you, and be too strong for you, hard one, who dared to eat your own guests in your house. So Zeus and the rest of the gods have punished you. This is what Odysseus says after finally escaping from the Cyclops. He's kind of has this, almost this sense of hubris afterwards. He uses, again, cunning over strength. He could never overpower this massive, brute with one eye who's eating his guys one by one, and just like they're cattle or sheep. He could never just hand-to-hand combat beat this guy. But what he does is he hides in the night amongst the sheep, and he escapes with the sheep after having pierced this guy's one eye, so he can't see him, and so he escapes in kind of this sneaky way, using cunning again. And then as he's leaving, though, then the hubris finally comes out, and as he's leaving, he yells out who his real name is. Through the whole ordeal, he had said his name was Nobody, which he uses again. That's an example of his cunning to outsmart the Cyclops. He says his name is Nobody, so that when the other Cyclops ask him who did it, they say nobody, or he says nobody. So he kind of gives himself a chance to get away. But in the end, as he's sailing away, he yells out his real identity to be kind of showing excessive pride that I want him to know who did this. It turns out these Cyclops are children of Poseidon, who happens to be the god of the sea, which is kind of the medium that Odysseus and his men are going to need to travel by to get back to his homeland. So, as you might imagine, if someone's picking on his children, Poseidon's not going to be all that happy. So he's kind of going to take it out on them through this journey home and make it way harder for Odysseus as he's journeying home. And through this all, he's you hear him invoke the name of, for example, Zeus, he's saying that Zeus needs to punish you. Countless times in the Odyssey, we see him invoke the gods. Particularly, Athena tends to have a special relationship with Odysseus. She kind of protects him, where it's kind of the opposite relationship that he has with Poseidon, who's constantly trying to punish him or get back at him for hurting his children. For example, we'll see whenever he's going to kind of leave somewhere or he's going to try to achieve something, he'll stop and first have a hecatomb, which is kind of like where you stop and you pray to the gods and ask them for protection so that you'll be well-being, or that you'll have well-being. And then he'll get away from them, and then he later eventually is forced to deal with kind of Poseidon head-to-head by fighting these two sea beasts called Scylla and Charybdis. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. But so finally Poseidon's still trying to go against him, still trying to fight him off. And Odysseus says, Dear friend, surely we are not unlearned in evils. This is no greater evil now than it was when the Cyclops had us cooped in his hollow cave by force and by violence. But even there, by my courage and counsel and my intelligence, we escaped away. I think that all this will be remembered someday too. Then do as I say, let us all be won over. So Odysseus here is urging them to not be frightened, to be just as much courage as they did against the Cyclops, while they see their guys being eaten next to him, to go through this, like, these massive kind of tentacled creatures and this, like, kind of whirlpool, to get through it all with courage and with trust in the gods. So his determination kind of incites that of all his men, and this is the intangible that if you hired Odysseus, you can't really put a price on this courage. That's not something you can create in a person. They either have it or they don't. And he has that special courageousness within him, and he can inspire other people with it. So even after he has to endure this great test, he remains steadfast in persevering. He will not rest until he and his men have found safety on the rough sea. Eurylochus describes him as, "You're a hard man, Odysseus. Your force is greater. Your limbs never wear out. You must be made all of iron." So this imagery of an iron man, it kind of truly sums up Odysseus. He's a man of holistic power, both mental and physical, and that's what he uses to kind of elude Poseidon's ultimate revenge the entire time. Alright, so then also something that is just constantly present within the epic poem is Odysseus's determination to return to his homeland being Ithaca. Odysseus endures countless battles through the epic poem, outsmarting the enchantress Circe, losing all his men to cannibals and starvation, enduring the angry seas alone after leaving Calypso, all in a determination to see his homeland again. Calypso even says that, but if you only knew in your own heart how many hardships you were fated to undergo, before getting back to your country, you would stay here with me and be the lord of this household and be an immortal. So she's saying, kind of criticizing him, why are you not just accepting that you're not supposed to get back there? Like, you've been journeying for almost up to a decade now. Why not just accept kind of this place of peace that he has with Calypso? But he won't. He wants to get back to his wife and to his son and to his Ithacan homeland that he loves so much, that he fought so valiantly for in Troy. He says, "What I want and all my days I pine for is to go back to my house and see my day of homecoming. And if some god batters me far out on the wine-blue water, I will endure it, keeping a stubborn spirit inside me. For already I have suffered much and done much hard work on the waves and in the fighting, so let this adventure follow." So through it all, Odysseus maintains his resolve. This is what makes his services invaluable. He will never quit. It is through the pervasive mood of suffering in this low point of the poem that gives way to sheer determination within him. This will all be rewarded in time. So after he finally gets back to Ithaca through all these trials, he finds his house is being inhabited by these suitors, these men who are trying to earn the hand of his wife Penelope. And they're kind of, at first they were kind of being gentlemen about it, but over the course of a decade, yeah, you can see that they've become kind of, well, they're not the best guests. They're eating all of his food, they're drinking all his wine, they're not honoring their king, they're acting as if he's dead because, well, for all they know, he is dead. And Penelope is still holding on to hope, though, that he's still out there somewhere, that he's still going to return. So Odysseus says, "You dogs, you never thought I would any more come back from the land of Troy, and because of that you despoiled my household, and forcibly took my serving women to sleep beside you, and sought to win my wife while I was still alive, fearing neither the immortal gods who hold the wide heaven, nor any resentment sprung from men to be yours in the future. Now upon you all the terms of destruction are fastened. All that you have now and what you could add from elsewhere, even so, I would not stay my hands from the slaughter, until I had taken revenge for all the suitors' transgression. Now the choice has been set before you, either to fight me or run. If any of you can escape death and its spirits, but I think not one man will escape, from sheer destruction. So we can only imagine the pain Odysseus must have felt in his 10 years longing for his Ithacan home.